Be chilly overall this upcoming weekend, so something we have to prepare for. So let's get you out the door and show you what it's like. First in Broward County, Davie down to 60, 58 in Tamarack, 59 in Pompano Beach to 61 in Dania Beach. And around northern Miami-Dade, we have low 60s here. Typical low for this time of year, 62, and that is where we're at the airport. 62 in Hialeah, 63 in Miami Beach, southern Miami-Dade, low 60s. Cutler Bay at 62, same for Homestead. Florida Keys, widespread 60s, but milder, up to 64. Updating in Key Largo, 68 in Big Pine Key. And on the local storm tracking radar, it's mostly dry out there. We won't have to worry about rain. We just have these wispy upper clouds that are moving in. Around northern Florida already, we have the concern for frost and freeze. So there are some advisories currently in effect. I'll have more on your local forecast coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We are waking up to some very thin upper clouds. It is mostly clear and it feels very nice and refreshing out there. And on the local storm tracking radar, mostly dry weather underway across the region, and we won't have to worry about rain for several days. Our main weather story will be temperatures. So let's take a look at what it's like right now in Pompano Beach. It's 59, 60 in Fort Lauderdale. Same for Hialeah, 62 in Miami to 60 in Kendall. And as we take a look at Homestead, also 62. These are very average readings for this time of year. And in the Florida Keys in the 60s, 64 Key Largo, 68 in Big Pine Key, including Key West. Our airflow out of the northwest right now, anywhere between 5 to 13 miles per hour. And we will have a significant cold air mass moving in across South Florida, and it is definitely producing some snow showers around sections of the Great Lakes region, more headed to the northeast, but you could see how cold it is around most of the country. In Chicago at 24, 22 in Kansas City, 37 in Atlanta, and here in South Florida we're sitting in the lower 60s. Our forecast calls for these wispy clouds to linger, so the sunshine may seem a little filtered, but then we get that cold air arriving throughout today and tonight. We're going to feel it. We're going to need to sport around the sweaters and jackets. Well, we're going to be waking up into the lower 50s tomorrow morning. We'll have lots of sunshine, and throughout the day we're going to struggle to warm up, possibly hitting that 70-degree mark. Heading into Sunday, cold start, mild finish, high pressure still in charge. We'll still have somewhat of a northerly flow, but more out of the north and east. So that's why temperatures will moderate tad heading into the early part of next week, but that will be temporary because then another strong cold front settles in. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters, but there are no advisories at least early in the day for Biscayne Bay and Dade Broward coastal waters. Really, for the Florida Keys, no advisories, light to a moderate chop. And the next tide cycle will be high tide at 10:31 for you in Fort Lauderdale. Highs today in the upper 70s, which is typical for this time of year. Then we move on into the overnight and we're going to drop down into the 50s. Just how low? The forecast low is 52, daytime high 72. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. We will be right back. Hey, you are going to feel the cold air building in across South Florida, and chilly air will be around over the weekend, so prepare accordingly. Right now, looking at temperatures in the upper 50s in spots, but low 60s, which is average. 59 in Pompano Beach, Fort Lauderdale checking in at 60. 58 in Tamarack to 60 in Sunrise. And then we look at northern Miami-Dade, widespread low 60s, Miami Beach at 62, same for Hialeah, 60 in Miami Lakes. Heading south, 59 in South Miami, Homestead reporting 62, 68 in Marathon as well for you in Key West, with the radar showing it's mostly dry with these thin wispy clouds around. Northern sections of the state dealing with a freeze warning, frost advisory, since temperatures here are at about freezing levels. Our wind flow is out of the north-northwest already, 5 to 13 miles per hour. Your full forecast for the weekend coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to these thin, wispy clouds. They're not the rain-producing kind of clouds, but these type of clouds will tend to filter the sunshine a bit, but we're going to get plenty of it throughout today with a northerly wind that will help colder air build in gradually. And here's a look at the local storm tracking radar. Mostly dry conditions underway across the region, and we are not expecting rain, or at least measurable rain, in 7+ days across South Florida. So our main weather story will be temperatures. Right now it is 59 in Pompano Beach, 60 in Fort Lauderdale, comfortably cool out there at 60 in Hialeah, 62 in Miami, which is average for this time of year. Kendall reporting 60 degrees. Florida Keys widespread 60s as well. Isla Mirada reporting 65. Good morning to you in Big Pine at 68. Same for Cudjoe Key and Key West. Our airflow north-northwest anywhere between 5 to 13 miles per hour. Our forecast calls for it to be a seasonable day temperature wise. In fact, this afternoon, the forecast highs will range between 75 and 77 degrees. But then by tonight, we get this push of cold air, and that will allow temperature readings to tumble into the lower 50s. I wouldn't be surprised if some spots in the western suburbs tomorrow morning will be in the upper 40s. So yes, it's going to be a cold one, and we're going to struggle to warm up throughout the day on Saturday. Temperatures try to moderate a bit on Sunday. So instead of the lower 50s, we'll be in the mid to upper 50s with daytime highs in the low 70s. And yes, we'll have a chilly start, a mild finish as the air mass moderates a little bit, opening up the doorway for another strong cold front to move in on Tuesday of next week. Small craft advisory starts tonight. North winds 5 to 10 knots. And for the Florida Keys, there are no advisories right now. Coastal waters light to a moderate chop. We're going to get high tide happening in the 10 o'clock hour for Fort Lauderdale. So for today, we'll have these thin clouds up. We're going to be feeling fine with temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Tonight, 52 is the forecast low for Miami, 51 in Fort Lauderdale to 63 in Key West. And your extended outlook calls for milder conditions on Monday, but then back to chilly Tuesday. And take a look at the lows on Wednesday, potentially in the widespread 40s. That's your 7 on 7 forecast.
Hey, good morning, Viv.
Good morning. And it's nice and seasonable, but it is cool. There are some spots that are waking up into the upper 50s this morning, but the cold air will certainly build gradually throughout the day, and we are going to have chilly air around over the entire weekend. So here's a look at temperatures to get you out the door. This is what it's like right now: 59 in Pompano Beach, 57 in Tamarack, Sunrise at 59, same for Davie, Fort Lauderdale at 60 degrees. Now in northern Miami-Dade, temperatures are in the widespread 60s, Miami 62, and that's the average low for this time of year. Opa-locka, Miami Lakes at 60, South Miami, you're checking in at 59, West Kendall down to 57 degrees. So this kind of weather does warrant for us to wear maybe a light jacket to head out. Temperature wise in the Keys, widespread 60s, 63 in Key Largo to 67 in Big Pine. It is mostly dry. We have these wispy clouds out there that will tend to filter out the sunshine, but don't worry, we'll get plenty of it with temperatures climbing into the mid and upper 70s. But we already have the concern for frost freeze around northern sections of the state. Your full forecast coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to these wispy thin clouds that will tend to filter the sunshine a bit today, but we'll still have plenty of sunshine, and we'll notice the air changing gradually throughout today. It is freezing in northern Florida, where there are concerns for frost and freeze. 32 degrees in Gainesville, Jacksonville, 30 in Tallahassee to 45 in Orlando. And then you take a look from the lake region south, temperatures are for the most part in the 60s, some spots in the western suburbs in the 50s. Currently 68 in Key West, 62 in Miami, 60 in Fort Lauderdale. Kendall reporting 57, 59 in Homestead, and temperatures are running a good 4 degrees cooler at this time in comparison to yesterday, and it promises to get chilly over the weekend. We already have a northwest flow dominating that will increase throughout today, 3 to 9 miles per hour. Humidity levels dropping. It is going to feel very nice throughout today. Radar sweeps showing and confirming it's dry everywhere, and over the next 7 to 10 days, it is going to be very dry across South Florida. Our main focus will be the colder air. From coast to coast we go. Parts of the Great Lakes, Northeast dealing with some snow showers and another storm system impacting the Pacific Northwest. It is cold in Minneapolis to 10 degrees, Chicago down to 23, freezing in New York City, 33, and we are still the warmest on the map. And our forecast does call for highs to range in the mid to upper 70s. And then overnight, temperatures will tumble quickly into the lower 50s. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some spots tomorrow morning in the western suburbs in the 40s. And we're going to struggle to get to 70 degrees. Temperatures moderate a little bit on Sunday as high pressure starts to shift more toward the east. So we'll have a mild finish, but then another strong cold front settles in early next week. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters, not for Biscayne Bay. North winds right now 5 to 10 knots. And for the Florida Keys, no advisories. Coastal waters here looking at a light to a moderate chop. And we're going to get high tide happening in the 10 o'clock hour for Fort Lauderdale. Highs today between 75, 77 degrees, feeling pleasant. But then tonight, temperatures go down into the lower 50s. Your extended outlooks does call for a cold stretch across the region as another front settles in on Monday, and that will allow temperatures to possibly get into the widespread 40s by midweek. And that's your 7-on-7 forecast.
Head into the weekend. We're counting down, Viv.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to be a chilly one. Right now it's feeling nice and cool, but the cold air is going to gradually build in throughout today, and we will feel it tonight into tomorrow morning as temperatures tumble dramatically into the lower 50s. Right now we do actually have some 50s mixed in across Broward County. We have 59 in Pompano, 57 in Parkland, 60 degrees in Fort Lauderdale. And in Miami, Dade County northern sections widespread 60s, 62 in Miami Beach, Hialeah reporting 61, Sweetwater down to 60, and South Miami reporting 58 degrees, 59 in Homestead. Widespread 60s for the Keys. Key Largo at 63, 67 between Marathon and Big Pine. But it is mostly dry. We're not going to have to worry about rain anytime soon. We'll deal with these thin upper clouds that will be hovering across South Florida. They'll tend to filter out the sunshine, but not too much. We're definitely going to get a lot of it throughout today, but there's already the concern for frost and freeze around several counties in northern Florida. Your complete outlook for the weekend coming up in a few minutes. Morning, South Florida. We are waking up to mostly clear skies, but there's these upper wispy looking clouds, and they're fair weather clouds. They'll try to filter out the sunshine, but we'll still have plenty of it today. And on the radar, it's mostly dry. Will stay mostly dry over the next several days. Our main weather story will be the cold air that is on the way, and it's going to be quite the stretch of chilly air across the region. Right now it is 59 in Pompano, 60 in Fort Lauderdale, 60 in Hialeah, to 62 in Miami. And believe it or not, this is actually typical for this time of year, even though temperatures are running a good 2 to 4 degrees cooler at this time versus yesterday. Temperatures widespread 60s across the Keys. 63 in Key Largo, 67 Big Pine Key, with the northwest wind already in place. So we're going to have cold air building in gradually. Tonight, you'll definitely need to wear a sweater or jacket. Probably both tomorrow morning as temperatures drop down into the lower 50s. Several areas in the western suburbs will be in the 40s, highs climbing to the lower 70s. Temperatures tend to moderate a little bit on Sunday, but still after a cool start, we're going to have a mild finish, slight warm up for Monday ahead of another front. Smallcraft advisory for our offshore water starts tonight. North wind 5 to 10 knots. And for the Florida Keys, no advisories. Coastal waters light to a moderate chop. We're going to get high tide at 11 a.m. in Miami. So highs today will range between 75, 77 degrees. Feeling pleasant tonight. Into the lower 50s, the forecast though for Miami at 52, 51 in Fort Lauderdale with your extended outlook calling for a strong cold front to move in once again on Monday. That will set the stage for the widespread 40s midweek. That's your 7 on 7.
Viv, good morning.
And good morning in South Florida. It is feeling fine out there, cool by South Florida standards, but it is actually typical for this time of year to wake up into the lower 60s. But some spots have actually managed to reach the upper 50s. But the cold air is set to build in throughout today. We're going to feel it over the weekend. So make sure you start taking out those extra layers, and we're going to be using them for several days. Currently, if you're heading outside the door this morning in Broward County, it's 57 in Tamarack and Parkland, 59 in Sunrise and Davie. Along the East Coast, Oakland Park, Fort Lauderdale, and even Dania Beach reporting 60 degrees. In northern Miami-Dade, we have 50s and 60s, 59 in South Miami, 62 in Miami Beach. Heading south, though, more in the way of 50s here. West Kendall 59, 58 South Miami, 58 in the Redlands. The Florida Keys in the 60s, 62 in Key Largo, but 68, a tad warmer in Key West. It is mostly dry out there, but we do have these wispy looking clouds, and these wispy looking clouds are definitely going to filter out the sunshine a bit today, but we'll still have plenty of it. The good news is that these clouds are not the rain producing kind of clouds. Now, we are already noticing that colder air filtering into northern Florida, where there's the concern for frost and freeze. This is where temperatures are at about 30 degrees or colder. So yes, advisory is currently present for several counties around the state, and wind speeds are already out of the north-northwest. More details on your local weather in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to a few wispy looking clouds, but overall we have this cool feel, yet it's seasonable for this time of year. Where it is freezing, that is in North Florida, 30 degrees in Tallahassee, it's 31 in Gainesville, 32 in Jacksonville. Several counties here under frost and freeze warnings. Around the theme parks in the mid 40s, especially in Orlando. And then from the lake south, we're in the widespread 60s, but a few spots in the western suburbs have managed to reach the upper 50s. Right now in Fort Lauderdale, it's 60. We have 61 in Miami. 68 degrees in Key West, with interior areas, yes, in the 50s, 59 in Hialeah, same for West Kendall. And temperatures are running a good 2-3 degrees cooler at this time versus yesterday. The wind out of the north-northwest, and it will be increasing a tad today, and that's what will help temperatures get even colder tonight, with humidity levels remaining very low. And also what's low is our rain chance, and we won't have to worry about measurable rain anytime soon, well into next week, possibly beyond the weekend. So our main weather story will be temperatures for sure, but there's more snow around the Great Lakes, Appalachians, Northeast, and another system pushing onshore around the Pacific Northwest, freezing around the Northeast, even through Atlanta, and we're still the warmest spot on the map. So we have this weekend front that arrives today, and that will set the stage for temperature readings to cool down into the low 50s tomorrow morning, and they'll start to moderate a tad as we move on into early next week. So by Monday, it's going to be warmer, mild to start off, and then we'll definitely get a blast of cold air once again. So we get a brief warm up for a day, and then temperature readings by the middle part of the week will be in the widespread 40s. So you're going to need to have the extra layers with you for several days. Small craft advisory for our offshore waters starts tonight. Seas building 2 to 3 feet. And for the Florida Keys, light to a moderate chop. No advisories for boaters here. In the 10 o'clock hour, we'll have high tide happening in Fort Lauderdale. So for today, thin clouds, feeling pleasant, mid to upper 70s. And then tonight's low forecast for Miami's 52, 51 in Fort Lauderdale. And on your extended outlook, South Florida will have a chilly weekend. Another front moves in on Monday, and that will set the stage for more sweater weather across South Florida the remainder of next week. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast. Hi there, Ethan. Lorena, South Florida, thank you so much for starting your day with us. It feels nice and cool out there, yet temperatures are typical for this time of year. Now today, the cold air will build and we will be on the chilly side for the first weekend of the year. And here's a look at temperatures. Some spots have made it into the 50s in Broward County. We have Tamarack at 57. 59 in Plantation, Davie, Rolling Oaks, 60 in Oakland Park and Fort Lauderdale. Northern Miami-Dade temperatures in the 50s and 60s too. We have Opelika, Miami Lakes at 59, 62 in Miami Beach. Heading south, 59 in West Kendall to 60 in Homestead, 60s for the Florida Keys, 62 in Key Largo, Islamorada 64, upper 60s from the middle to the lower Florida Keys. The radar, nice and dry out there. We just have these thin, wispy clouds, not the rain-producing kind that will linger throughout today, but it'll be beautiful with seasonable highs in the mid to upper 70s. Your complete weekend outlook is coming up in 15 minutes. Good morning, South Florida. Waking up to a few wispy, thin-looking clouds and a nice cool feel out there. On the radar, it's mostly dry and will stay mostly dry over the next several days. Our main weather story will be temperatures. And let's get you out the door and show you what it's like. It's 59 in Pompano, 60 in Fort Lauderdale. Hi, Aaliyah. Good morning to you at 59, 61 at the airport, 59 in Kendall. Homestead reporting 60 degrees. Florida Keys in the widespread 60s, a little cooler around upper portions. Key Largo at 62, 68 for Key West. With the wind out of the north-northwest, and it'll be increasing gradually throughout today, allowing chillier air to move in. And we're going to get a cold blast of air tonight into tomorrow morning, with lows dropping down into the low 50s and highs struggling to get into the lower 70s. We'll have full sunshine. It'll be beautiful. We'll just need to wear the extra layers. Temperatures moderate a tad more on Sunday, so it's not going to be as cold, but we'll have a mild finish since high pressure will be sliding toward the east, and that will set the stage for a brief warm up, maybe for just a day, into early next week until a stronger cold front settles in on Tuesday. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters. No advisories for Biscayne Bay. North winds today, 5 to 10 knot, seas building 2 to 3 feet. For the Florida Keys, no advisories here. Coastal waters, light to a moderate chop, with the next tide cycle being high tide at 10:31 in Fort Lauderdale. Highs today will range between 75, 77 degrees. We'll have a pleasant feel, but tonight the cold air builds. 52 is the forecast, so in Miami, 51 in Fort Lauderdale. So as we gradually warm up a tad on Monday, temperatures fall again on Tuesday, and we could be in the widespread 40s by Wednesday. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast. Oh, absolutely. So we're closing out the week feeling cool out there, yet seasonable, because a typical low for this time of year is 62. And the low this morning in Miami was at 61, 60 in Fort Lauderdale, and in the upper 60s from the middle to the lower Florida Keys. This is where we're at right now, and it's definitely cool by our standards. So we'll need to sport on maybe a light jacket, but then in the afternoon, it should be very comfortable. 61 currently in Fort Lauderdale, 59 in Sunrise, Rolling Oaks, Hollywood reporting 62 degrees. And around northern Miami-Dade, 50s and 60s here. Miami Beach at 62. North Miami, Miami Shores reporting 59. 58 in South Miami to 60 in Homestead, mid to upper 60s continuing around the middle and lower Florida Keys. It is mostly dry out there. We just have these wispy looking clouds. It looks beautiful. They're not the rain producing kind, with our day planner calling for seasonable highs in the 70s, but then overnight temperatures get much colder. Just how low? We'll have those details in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. Waking up to sunshine and just a few thin, wispy looking clouds. It is freezing around North Florida. 32 degrees in Gainesville to 30 in Tallahassee. Several counties around here under frost and freeze watches, warnings. Here in South Florida, we've woken up into the low 60s, some spots in the upper 50s, and it is currently 68 in Key West, 61 in Miami, Fort Lauderdale to 59 in West Kendall, with temperatures running a good 3-4 degrees cooler at this time versus yesterday. We already have this northerly flow that will be increasing throughout today, keeping humidity levels low well into the weekend, and we won't have to worry about rain over the next 7 days. Big view showing where the weather is happening. That's around the northern tier of the country, where there are a lot of cold weather advisories. We also have some cold weather advisories for northern Florida, but it is frigid in Chicago, 22, 9 in Minneapolis, 21 in Denver, and it's going to get colder through the weekend with a reinforcing shot of cold air that will have us in the low 50s tomorrow and highs struggling to reach 70 degrees. Temperatures moderate a tad Sunday into Monday with yet another cold front that will set the stage for the widespread 40s mid-week. Your boating forecast calls for no advisories on Biscayne Bay, but starting tonight, our offshore waters will have a small craft advisory going into effect. No advisories for now in the Keys, light to a moderate chop. And at 11 o'clock, that will be the next high tide happening in Miami. Highs today, pleasant, 75 to 77 degrees. And the forecast low for Miami tonight, 52, 51 in Fort Lauderdale, 63 in Key West. And on your extended outlook, South Florida, we're going to have a chilly weekend. Another front moves in on Monday, and then the chilly air sticks around well into next week. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. This is how we woke up at 60 in Fort Lauderdale, 61 in Miami, 68 degrees in Key West, with temperatures right now remaining in the low 60s along the East Coast, but some spots did manage to get into the 50s. Right now, 61 in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, 68. Key West continuing the same, with temperatures running a good 2-4 degrees cooler at this time versus yesterday. We're going to have these wispy looking clouds, lots of sunshine filtering in, and then this shot of much colder air arriving tonight as winds increase out of the northwest. So that will set the stage for temperature readings to tumble into the lower 50s along the East Coast. So I wouldn't be surprised in seeing some 40s in the mix tomorrow, and then highs climbing into the lower 70s. We'll have a beautiful day across the region. It'll be not as chilly on Sunday, with temperatures moderating a tad as high pressure slides to the east. Your boating forecast looks okay around Biscayne Bay. Starting tonight for our offshore waters, we'll have a small craft advisory going into effect, with seas building for now 2 to 3 feet. There are no advisories for boaters in the Keys. Coastal waters light to a moderate chop. And at 11 a.m., we'll have high tide in Miami, 12:43 in the afternoon for Key West. Highs today between 75, 77 degrees. We'll have a pleasant feel. Tonight, temperature readings will fall, and we'll need to sport around the sweaters and jackets for a couple of days, believe it or not. We have this brief warm up on Monday, and then another front settles in, setting the stage for potentially the widespread 40s midweek. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. In South Florida, it's looking beautiful outside with a few thin, wispy looking clouds. We have a lot of sunshine and it feels nice and cool. The local storm tracking radar indicating it's dry and it's going to be dry over the next several days. Our main weather story will be temperatures because it promises to get cold and it's going to last for a while. Right now, 60 degrees in Pompano Beach, 62 in Hollywood, 60 in Hialeah, 61 in Miami, to 59 degrees in Kendall, 60 in Homestead, Florida Keys, widespread 60s here, Isla Mirada at 64 to 67 in Big Pine Key. The wind out of the northwest, and it'll be increasing gradually today, helping cold air settle into the region. And we are looking at temperatures overnight tumbling into the lower 50s, high temperature staying cool in the upper 60s to low 70s. By Sunday, high pressure starts to slide to the east, so it's not going to be as cold, but we'll have definitely a mild finish with a brief warm up if you want to call it that, for Monday, because then it's back to chilly the remainder of the week. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters. Biscayne Bay looking okay, and this small craft advisory is going to last at least through Sunday. We have a north wind 5 to 10 knots, seas building 2 to 3 feet. Biscayne Bay will be at a light chop, and around the Florida Keys, coastal waters here light to a moderate chop, with seas inside the reef building 1 to 3 feet, beyond the reef 2 to 5 feet. Now the next tide cycle is going to be high tide at 10:31 in Fort Lauderdale, 12:43 for Key West. Highs today seasonable, 75, 77 degrees, and tonight the forecast low for Miami 52, 63 in Key West. So we'll have a chilly weekend. Another front settles in Monday, and that will have us sporting around the sweaters well into next week, with possibly widespread lows by Wednesday. And that's your 7 on 7.
Cool out there.
Yes, it's been nice and cool with temperatures in the lower 60s. Few spots in the western suburbs were in the 50s. So yes, this is how we woke up. 60 in Fort Lauderdale, 61 in Miami to 68 in Key West, and this is where we're at right now. Temperatures still, for the most part, in the 60s. Fort Lauderdale at 65, 64 in Oakland Park. Parkland down to 60, 62 in Davie. And then we move into northern Miami-Dade. Temperature readings here also in the 60s. Miami Beach, Coconut Grove at 64, even Sweetwater heading south, 64 in West Kendall, as well as Homestead, with temperatures remaining in the upper 60s for the middle and lower Florida Keys, currently 69 in Key West. It is nice and dry on the radar. We just have these wispy looking clouds out and about, but throughout today it will be a pleasant one with a mix of sun and clouds, and temperatures climbing into the mid and upper 70s. It promises to get much colder overnight. More details on that coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. Waking up to bright sunshine and some wispy upper clouds that are moving in, but it's much colder around northern sections of the state. It was freezing earlier this morning, now up to 43 in Gainesville, 41 in Jacksonville, and then here in South Florida, we're actually starting to bounce to more mild levels in the 60s, pretty much widespread, mid to upper 60s, when we started off in the low 60s and some spots in the 50s. It is currently 65 in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, 69 in Key West, interior areas, 66 in Hialeah, 64 in West Kendall, with temperatures running a good 2-4 degrees cooler at this time versus yesterday. Our airflow will remain out of the northwest today, increasing slightly. Humidity levels will remain low, as well as our rain chances. In fact, we're not going to have to worry about rain for quite some time. The radar looking excellent, mostly dry. Around the northern tier of the country, you could see this stream of clouds and moisture moving in. Another system impacting the Pacific Northwest, but there are some winter storm watches and warnings that are in place. Southern portions of the country, a different story, but around northern sections of Florida, several counties still remain under a frost advisory. So here's what we can expect a seasonable afternoon with highs in the mid to upper 70s. We get this shot of colder air tonight, so that should help drop down temperatures into the low and mid 50s. Daytime highs will stay cool in the lower 70s. We'll have a ton of sunshine even on Sunday. It just won't be as cold to start off. High pressure, though, slightly shifts to the east, and that's why we're going to have a mild finish and warm up, temporary warm up for Monday. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters. No advisories for Biscayne Bay and for the Florida Keys. Coastal waters light to moderate chop. With the next tide cycle, that'll be high tide at 11 a.m. in Miami. So for today, temperatures will climb between 75, 77 degrees. It'll be feeling pleasant, but tonight the cold air builds and we'll be in the lower 50s along the East Coast. Your extended outlook does call for brief warm up Monday, back to chilly Tuesday, and the remainder of next week. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast. All right, South Florida, if you're headed to the beach, want to go out in your boat, well, we don't have any advisories for swimmers or advisories for Biscayne Bay, but for our offshore waters starting tonight, there will be a small craft advisory going into effect. North winds 5 to 10 knots, seas building 2 to 3 feet for the Florida Keys. Coastal waters here going between a light to a moderate chop with seas beyond the reef building 2 to 5 feet. Next tide cycle will be high tide this morning, 10:31 in Fort Lauderdale, 12:43 in Key West. So for today, we'll have sunshine, a pleasant feel in the mid to upper 70s, and then tonight cold air starts to build in and temperatures will tumble into the lower 50s along the East Coast, 60s for the Florida Keys. And on your extended outlook, South Florida, we'll have a chilly weekend, slight warm up if you want to call it that on Monday, very brief, and then it's back to chilly from Tuesday and most of next week. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. And it is looking beautiful. We just have these wispy looking clouds out there, but overall it has felt pleasantly cool, and now we're starting to warm up a little bit more. On the radar, it's mostly dry, will stay dry over the next several days. Our main focus will be temperatures, 65 in Fort Lauderdale, 66. Good morning to you over in Hialeah, to 64 in Kendall. Florida Keys, widespread 60s as well, 65 in Key Largo, 69 in Big Pine Key and Cudjoe Key. Our breeze out of the north-northwest now, 6 to 13 miles per hour. We'll have a seasonable afternoon in the mid to upper 70s, and then tonight a strong push of cold air settles in, and that will allow temperature readings to tumble into the 50s tomorrow morning and highs only in the lower 70s. We'll have tons of sunshine all weekend long, but temperatures moderate a tad on Sunday, so it's not going to be as cold to start off, but we'll have certainly a mild finish. Heading into Monday, conditions warm up even more ahead of another strong cold front. Small craft advisory starts tonight for our offshore waters. No advisories for now for Biscayne Bay. North winds 5 to 10 knots, seas building 2 to 3 feet. Biscayne Bay will be at a light chop. Florida Keys going between a light to a moderate chop with seas inside the reef building 1 to 3 feet. And the next tide cycle is going to be high tide coming up in the next hour for Fort Lauderdale and at 11 a.m. in Miami. So highs today between 75 and 77 degrees. Tonight, though, the cold air builds. 52 is the forecast, so in Miami, 51 Fort Lauderdale. Your extended outlook calls for a chilly weekend here in South Florida. Monday, another front settles in, so we'll still need to sport around the sweaters and jackets through next week. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast.